Ever wonder why some women choose to live solo? No boyfriend, no partner, not even hinting they're on the hunt for one. It's not about being lonely, having no options, or nursing a broken heart. The truth is deeper, maybe even a little unsettling. It flips everything we've been taught about what a woman's life should look like. When a woman chooses to be alone, she's not wandering aimlessly, she's finding herself. That kind of self-discovery doesn't come with cheers, likes, or a +1. It comes with quiet strength, a kind of freedom that's raw and real. Most folks don't get it. She's not lonely. She's picky in the best way. She's not icy. She's just done pouring her heart into people who didn't care to feel it. There's something bold, almost disruptive, about a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel complete. It shakes up the idea that women are supposed to be emotionally dependent, always needing someone to save them. It's a truth that throws people off. Most guys don't know how to handle a woman who doesn't need rescuing, and a lot of women are still figuring out how to see themselves in that kind of quiet power. Carl Jung once said that everything we push away in ourselves becomes a part of our shadow. These women living solo? They're like a mirror to that collective shadow. They embody what so many secretly want to be, but don't dare try. They don't shout for love, they speak their truth softly. They don't chase attention, they step back to protect their peace. That makes people uneasy because while the world screams, hurry up and find someone, these women have found the strength in just being with themselves. A woman who lives alone isn't lost. She's playing on a different level. She doesn't beg for anything. She chooses. She doesn't need approval. Her presence is enough. And yeah, that draws criticism, judgment, and labels. People try to box her in, explain her away. But what they miss is that her absence is actually a presence, one that fills her life, challenges norms, and shifts the emotional status quo. She's not waiting for just any love. She's holding out for something that doesn't dim her light. Until that shows up, she's whole, strong, complete. Maybe you don't see it yet. Maybe you think it's just pride or some kind of emotional baggage dressed up as strength. But deep down, there's a question stirring inside you, even if you try to ignore it. What if that quiet path she's on is the only one that leads to the kind of love that starts with you? The silence around a woman who lives alone isn't empty. It's her sanctuary. People who don't get that might call her cold, distant, or stuck up. But she didn't build that space to keep the world out. She built it to keep herself whole. Jung also said, we project what we don't face in ourselves onto others. Maybe that's why so many see her solitude as absence when it's actually the richest soil for self-discovery. While most people chase external connections to feel full, she turned inward. In that deep dive, she faced old wounds, childhood pain, quiet abandonments, love that was just attachment in disguise. Her choice to be alone didn't come from a fresh cut, but from a scar that's healed. She didn't give up on love. She just stopped settling for what others called love when it only made her feel smaller. This woman knows chaos. She's loved until she lost herself, given too much, begged for scraps she never should have accepted. But at some point she woke up. It wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a slow burn of disappointments that stopped breaking her and started teaching her. What you see now isn't coldness, it's emotional maturity. And maturity is scary because it demands real presence, depth, and truth. She doesn't want just any company. She wants reciprocity. She's not drawn to promises anymore, only to real, honest presence. That's why she might seem out of reach to some. Not because she's difficult, but because she's whole. She doesn't want to be saved. She wants to be seen. That takes more than charm or smooth talk. It takes courage to meet her where she's at, in the depths most avoid. That's where a lot of people tap out. A whole woman sparks two reactions: admiration from those chasing their own wholeness, and fear from those still living in halves, waiting for someone else to make them feel complete. She's not here to complete anyone. She wants to overflow alongside someone who's also found themselves. Until then, she's alone. Not because fate dealt her a bad hand, but because she's loyal to her own soul. She's not hiding, she's protecting herself. There's a big difference between isolating and preserving who you are. But the world doesn't always see that. Society still pushes the fairy tale that happily ever after only comes in pairs, that being single is some kind of failure. Jung said where convention rules, authenticity struggles. And this woman, she's done with convention. She lives for what's real. You'll hear people say, "You're too picky," or "You should settle. Nobody's perfect." She just smiles, calm and knowing, because what they call picky is just her bare minimum. It took her years to realize she deserves it. She's not chasing perfection. She's looking for someone who's done the work, faced their own shadows like she has. That's rare. It's not something you stumble across in a DM or at a bar. Her existence alone proves you can be happy without depending on anyone else. And that rips the mask off a world that thrives on insecurity. She's not in a rush. She's not here to please anyone or meet society's timeline. That stirs up a quiet kind of anger in a world obsessed with now. She wants depth while everyone's chasing distractions. She wants presence while the world offers fleeting vibes. She craves soul-level connections while others are busy curating their next post. When she says no, it's not a game. It's truth. When she walks away, it's not drama, it's self-respect. When she stays home instead of settling for shallow company, it's not arrogance, it's clarity. That clarity, earned through pain and growth, is her revolution. She doesn't live to please, she lives to be. And that simple act of being is what makes her so threatening to the system. Maybe what unsettles people most isn't her solitude, it's the peace she's found in it. Jung taught that those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. She took that inner journey, and it was brutal, stripping away masks, facing old dependencies, rebuilding herself piece by piece. Now she doesn't define herself through anyone else's eyes. She sees herself clearly, and that changes everything. How many times have you wondered if being alone means you're failing, or if it's actually freedom? How often have you felt the need to explain why you don't have someone by your side? This woman's been there. She used to think something was wrong with her for being solo in a world that worships couples, even the miserable ones. But one day she got it. It's better to be alone than invisible in a relationship. That's when she made a promise to herself. Never again would she settle for less than she's worth. Her path isn't a straight shot. There are days of doubt, moments of longing, nights of heavy silence. But with every choice she makes consciously, her strength grows. She learned that real love doesn't cage you, burn you out, or twist you into something you're not. The love she's after frees you, adds to you, holds you up without smothering. Until that kind of love shows up, she keeps growing solo, not out of stubbornness, but out of integrity. She's the living proof of Jung's individuation. She faced her shadow, dove into her unconscious, and came back more whole than ever. Now that she knows herself, she won't settle for being half of anything. She's not looking for someone to complete her. She wants someone to share her awareness. That's intimidating because it demands emotional accountability. And let's be real, most people aren't ready to love that way. Too many love out of need, control, or fear. She walks alone today because every step she takes is a lesson learned. Every no is self-respect. Every boundary she sets is a reminder that love isn't something you beg for, it's something you choose. She doesn't need to prove her worth to anyone. That certainty, born from the deepest parts of her soul, shifts everything around her. A woman who's rediscovered herself is powerful, not because she's loud or aggressive, but because of her clarity. Jung said the tree that reaches for the sky needs roots that dig deep into hell. She's lived that. She's gone down into the mess of her own story, faced ancestral fears, inherited pain, traumas that weren't just hers but belonged to every woman before her. She broke those cycles. She said no to relationships that replayed the same old toxic script. She learned it's not her job to fix anyone, save anyone, or accept crumbs just to avoid being alone. When she stopped settling, the world tried to tell her she was wrong. Too much, too hard to love. But she held her ground, first with hesitation, then with conviction, and now with a kind of unshakable strength. Someone who's faced their own abyss doesn't fear absence anymore. She feeds herself with silence, warms herself with her own presence. She's not untouchable. She just won't let herself be torn apart. There's a difference between opening your heart and letting it be trampled. She opens up, sure, but only for those who show up with realness, not rehearsed lines or empty gestures. She's seen enough to spot the difference between someone who's present and someone who's just performing. Her intuition is razor sharp now. Her energy is a filter. She can sense shallowness from a mile away and doesn't hesitate to step back. Her transformation isn't just skin deep, it's primal, archetypal. It's like she's tapped into an ancient knowing, a memory that women weren't born to serve or shrink, but to express and overflow. That awakening sparked something fierce in her, a wild, intuitive, emotionally sovereign woman. She's alone, but she's not lost. She's in tune with something bigger, her own destiny. No matter how many labels people throw, cold, distant, picky, none of them stick. She doesn't live to fit in. She lives to expand. She's not chasing attention. She radiates presence. She's not waiting to be chosen. She's the one choosing. That flip in the script throws people off, especially those who still try to control what it means to be a woman. But she's already crossed that line. On the other side, she found that the real relationship starts when you've loved yourself enough to not need anyone else. There's something sacred in how she moves through the world now. No need for applause or likes. Her confidence is quiet, and that silence holds her true power. Jung said what we face within becomes our destiny. By choosing herself over and over, she's writing a destiny that's hard for others to grasp, but impossible not to envy. She doesn't beg for space in anyone's life because she knows presence should be invited, not demanded. When that invitation doesn't come from a place of truth, she walks away. Not with anger, but with the dignity of someone who's gotten lost too many times to let it happen again. What people don't always see is that she still craves love. She wants to be held, seen, chosen, but without losing herself. She spent too long squeezing into molds that were too small for her soul. Now she only shows up where there's room for her to be whole. That takes a kind of maturity that goes beyond romance. It takes awareness, the kind that comes from facing your own shadow and still choosing to love. She's not chasing fairy tales. She's after a soul-level connection, one where neither has to dim their light or silence their truth. To some, that might sound like too much. And that's fine. She'd rather wait than survive on scraps. To a lot of people, that looks like arrogance. But it's just self-love in its rawest form. We're seeing a new kind of woman emerge, one who's walked away from the shallow and dove into the deep. She's not just desired, she's respected. She chose solitude not because she gave up on love, but because she realized real love doesn't ask you to betray yourself. When she steps into a room, the energy shifts. It's subtle but undeniable. This isn't some mystical vibe. It's the weight of someone who's fought her inner battles and come out peaceful. Not because she's conquered every fear, but because she's learned to live with them without breaking. Jung would say she's found wholeness by embracing both her light and shadow. She doesn't shy away from love, but she won't settle for anything unbalanced, where one has to shrink so the other can shine. She wants a love where she can be everything. Shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. She's learned that those who only love the pretty parts don't know what love really is. Those who demand constant sweetness miss the beauty of the bitter moments that fuel growth. She's too whole to settle for halves, too free to accept cages disguised as care, too sensitive for shallow ties and strong enough to keep walking this path, even when it's lonely or misunderstood. That's the mark of an awakened soul, trading instant validation for deeper truth. The world fears women like her because they don't need, don't bow, don't mold themselves to fit. They challenge old systems, question outdated patterns, and break silent agreements that say a woman's worth is tied to being with someone. When she rewrites her story, she sparks something in others. That's what makes her revolutionary, even if the world doesn't see it yet. So she keeps going, sometimes with tears, sometimes with her head held high, but always grounded. She's not alone because she's lacking. She's with herself, and after everything she's been through, that's more than enough. The love that comes next won't be her salvation. It'll be a celebration. It won't fill her. It'll overflow. When a woman chooses to walk alone, the world tries to tell her she's wrong, but deep inside, she feels something clicking into place. It's not pride or defiance. It's wisdom, the kind that only grows in silence. Jung called this individuation, the journey to become fully yourself. No masks, no compromises. When that happens, nothing outside her holds more power than the truth beating in her chest. That truth shows up in the quiet way she closes a door without bitterness, in how she steps back when a space no longer feeds her soul, in the peace she carries even when no one's beside her. She's learned that being alone isn't a curse, it's a vow to stay true to herself. The world keeps pushing her to believe she's missing something, dangling distractions, shallow flings, or picture-perfect love stories. But she's seen behind that curtain. She knows it's not about finding someone, it's about never losing herself again. Once that truth takes root, everything shifts. Desire turns into discernment. Lack becomes choice. Waiting becomes a path. What used to hurt now teaches. What used to trap her now sets her free. You can feel it, can't you? That spark, that tug deep inside. Maybe it's a memory, an old wound, or a longing that never quite made sense. Maybe it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you're becoming. Either way, something in you is asking to be seen more clearly, something that doesn't fit the old molds anymore. If you let it, that something could change how you see love, how you connect with others, and most importantly, how you show up for yourself. This woman, the one who lives alone, isn't just someone who doesn't fit the script. She's a walking symbol of emotional freedom. She's proof you can rebuild without rushing, without fear, without proving anything to anyone. She doesn't lead or follow. She carves her own way, unique and untouchable. Along that path, she lights small fires for others who are starting to wake up too. If her story stirs something in you, maybe it's because you're ready for a new kind of love, one that starts with making peace with yourself, a love that thrives on silence, presence, and truth, a love you don't have to beg for or fake. If that love hasn't arrived yet, maybe it's because you first needed to become the woman who won't settle for less than she's worth.